to Radio Wasteland, the best in anything, anywhere, at any time. I'm your host, Chauncey Hallworth. This is my co-host, Kara Kittrick.
Hello.
Kara, I got a question for you.
Yes, what's
Why
up?
didn't you tell me my writing was full of purple prose and adverbs?
Well, there were so many other things to mention. I figured it's triage. You deal with the head wound before you deal with the liver failure.
Right. I'm going through one of these things and I create so many things. And I saw this, and don't get me wrong, create so many things comes with this implication that they're good. But I have this attitude in my life that if creating something is fun, and I'll give it a shot. You want me to design you an outfit? It'll be terrible, but I'll give it a shot.
Right.
So, just in general, I saw a woman explain to me the learning curve of creativity, and I thought it was interesting, and I thought I'd talk about it because it actually kind of helps me. And it is when you first start doing something, you have these like, this is going to happen or something like that. Now, don't get me wrong. In the case of everything that I do, when I first started doing it, I was 12. I don't know. I don't know how this applies to a lifetime of failure, but you first learn something and you have expectations, or you have not expectations, but a view.
Sure.
I don't know. It's different for everybody. And then as you learn, you swoop down. Because you basically learn all the stuff you didn't know, which is a lot. and then it shows the curve start to swoop back up. And she was saying you never get back to where you initially were, but you do get closer. So you go from dreamer to reality to expert working, which is a constant uphill battle. And I'm just like, that makes a lot of sense. Why was this never explained to me prior? And so I guess that's why I'm explaining it right now, so that other people hear it as well. I wish I remember who I heard this from.
Well, there's actually, I've seen this graph before, and there's actually a name for it.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, and it doesn't just apply to making things. It applies to pretty much any human activity, and it's the Dunning-Kruger effect, wherein you know nothing, you know nothing. You get a little bit of knowledge, and then you have confidence over on the y-axis, and like progress over on the x-axis, and you get a little bit of knowledge and your confidence goes through the roof, and you never get to that point again because it's unreasonable. And then you immediately fall off once you realize, oh no, this is hard.
Right.
And that applies to anything, because everything is hard, because we live in a bad world.
Yeah. I think I've in looking back on my life, I think I realized that I have wallowed in those pits in a lot of different aspects of my life. And that's why I found it so incredibly interesting.
Yeah. And this is why teenagers
I don't think a lot of people realize
confidence.
they're wallowing in those pits.
Yeah. Well, I think it's better for the people around you to be in the pit than to be in the peak, but sure feels a lot nicer to be at that first peak where you think you know everything.
Oh yeah. Apply it to a relationship.
Oh yeah.
I have a lot of friends that are sort of obsessed with passion in a relationship, and being a person who's been in a relationship for 2 decades, just like everything else in life, as people change and grow and adapt, passion ebbs and flows.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you can't make it through this downtime that you've committed to one another while you work things out, you're not going to get to the passion on the other side. And that's why I see people who can't hold down a relationship a lot of the time, or either have like traumas they need to work through, or of course, but tend to be sort of obsessed with this passion.
They just want that first phase.
Right. Yeah. And it happens a lot with art and creativity and probably people's careers. I don't know what happened to me. Apparently I'm positive now. This is a new chance. Positive.
Well, excellent. Maybe you're coming out of that valley.
Yeah.
You're
Well,
coming
unfortunately,
out of the
negative
valley
was
of
my
mental
brand.
health.
Yeah. Negative was my brand. So it's like,
what we need to do is get you like a fake mustache to go over your real mustache.
Yeah.
And be like, Chauncey is dead, but this is Chauncey from the negative zone. He's super positive. He's peppy, you know.
Yeah. So
I
having
wonder
a
if
full
people would
beard,
buy that. Yeah.
having a full beard, I wonder if they make like a goatee bulb cap.
Like
just like a piece of skin
how that would work.
that I can put around the front of my beard. So really I just have like huge pork chops and some like neck beard.
You just need to learn to retract it. Just slurp back into your face.
Yeah. That brings up a whole nother conversation about the mirror of the universe, and that is, are you the good one or the bad one?
God. So, okay, how are we doing this? If it's like equal in like skills and just general nature, but like their
No. That's the Bizarro. That's the Bizarro universe. This is a whole different concept. That's DC Bizarro universe. You got Superman, Bizarro Superman, you know. Right. I guess Bizarro Superman's also
the rules
strong.
To me.
Yeah, there's a lot of liberties to be taken here. So I guess I think it comes down more so to positive and evil intentions, not exact opposites.
Okay. So I just take my temperament and my like ideology, all my beliefs and views about the world, and just flip those 180 degrees.
Right.
Well, I think negative zone Kara is just a libertarian.
Oh. Yeah. Wearing a halter top.
Yeah.
And a mini skirt. Have you seen have you seen these episodes that I'm talking about? They're sort of these Star Trek episodes.
No, not really.
Oh, okay. These Star Trek episodes with the goatees are also notorious that the women that are evil are like dressed like totally slinky. Like they got like halter tops and mini skirts and like heeled boots, you know, and that's how they rule the evil realms, you know?
Okay, but I might be the evil one then, because that's how I dress a lot of the time. I wear a lot of tank tops and like thigh-high stockings and long boots.
That's how you can tell the skanky ones are from the mirror.
Right. Okay, so the unmirror version of me is not goth at all. Like we're talking pink sweater, scarf, just preppy, and
well, one of them's you. So I mean, we can't get like two out there. I mean, how many of you are there? This is just the mirror universe. One of them is you.
No, I'm saying the mirror universe version of me is me, but like sort of
like a cheerleader that works at a bank.
I'm thinking like preppy campus youth Republican type vibes.
Yeah.
You know,
I get that. Sings in the a cappella group.
Well, I did sing in the a cappella group, but I don't do that anymore. So
did you really?
Yeah, I mean, in high school.
Man, there's a lot of levels to your nerddom.
Yes, that's true.
A cappella group in I mean, I sang in choir in like grade school, but in high school, that's like
I feel like not really though.
That's a lifestyle at that point.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing. We're talking about Reading and we're talking about West Reading. So like
West Reading, I see.
No, well, what I'm saying is like who was in choir, the really like churchy put together kids.
Right.
And that's also who was the popular kids at like, or at least at the time it was.
I see. You guys were the socias and we were the cutters.
I don't know what that means, but okay, yeah.
So there's this great movie called Breaking Away that takes place in this small town, and it has to do with bike riding. Dennis Quaid's in it. It's great. Absolutely great. You should watch it. But in town, there's a college, and then there's the kids who like grew up as like the kids of the quarry workers. And so there were the socias and there were the cutters. You know, and the socias were like the cool kids with like the sweater draped over their shoulders. And then the cutters were all like, were like the dirty town kids.
But I mean, I feel like this is, there was definitely that divide in the school, but there's also like that divide, like just the people who live on the west side of Reading tend to be like much more affluent than the people who are more sort of over in the like Hartnell sort of area, just like, which is a bigger area. And I don't know that it's a huge difference, but like there is kind of a difference. So I think that was a
So you guys thought you were better than us?
I think probably the like preppier kids were just more situated to be more popular at Shasta High than say at Enterprise. But I don't know. I don't really know. I had like maybe
because
10 friends in high school. So
yeah, I do know. I do, because I'm actually messing with you. So I went to Enterprise High School.
Oh, well, see, there you go.
Yeah. And about a year in Enterprise High School, a bunch of my friends, I should probably change that, a bunch of people who ran in my circle. So, when you're a kid that age, people run in your circle. A bunch of kids that ran in my circle vandalized a school with swastikas on it.
Yeah.
And the cops came to my door. And I got partially in trouble for this, but my mom wouldn't let him have anything to do with me. I swore to God, I'm just all, I don't do no,
right.
I don't do no Nazis, and and then it had to get reported to the school. I had gotten in trouble at the school also, and I had a 0.0 grade point average. Oof. And I was given the boot.
Oof.
I had to go to Shasta at that point.
Shasta High School.
Shasta High School, yeah. So
okay.
My high school career was split.
So you've been on both sides of the tracks.
I have.
You are the one who can unite Reading, except that you live in Ashland now.
Yes, yeah. Well, I mean, I got to come back in on a horse.
Right, yeah. At Reading's darkest hour, Chauncey appears on the horizon, sort of on the dawn of the third day.
Right, yeah. Kind of bringing reason to the reasonless. That's you who's listening.
So you just have a band of like weird liberals from Seattle behind you on horses with their, vegan lattes and all that.
I don't think they would follow me. I don't get a following of either liberals or conservatives. Neither of them like the fact that I don't know. I don't know what I am. I don't know what I am.
Yeah, that's fair.
I purely vote socially. And I know that's terrible, and people are probably, you can send in some hate mail to us if you want. I normally base all of my voting off of socially, and this is why I tend to vote liberally. So this might piss the audience off. That's good. I feel that if we all can't work together to solve the problem will not get solved. Therefore, a lot of the problems that they have us vote for, I don't even really care about, as long as I vote for a world where we all work together to solve those problems. Until we fix that, I kind of see the rest of it as fodder for people to fight over.
I feel like both sides definitely claim to represent a world in which people like work together, though.
Well, I the only world where people work together is one where people are accepted for whatever they do.
Okay, I see what you mean. So you mean you vote like based on social issues?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
absolutely.
Okay. I see.
If somebody even gives me slightly racist, sexist, homophobic vibes, I'm not voting. And don't get me wrong, I mess up and I say stuff too, but I also expect the people that I elect to be better than me.
Which is
I'm not going to elect me, Nobody's electing me. I need somebody better than me, somebody that I feel like didn't inhale. Or whatever.
Okay, I say this from the bottom of my heart. You are better than Bill Clinton.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. Hillary sure thinks so. All right, jokes aside, come on now. Let's move on. Carrie, you're getting weird. What'd you bring for us in the news today?
Okay, so I brought for all of you 3 articles that you gave me.
Right, yeah.
So the first one, inflation has been taking an insidious new form, according to Yahoo News, called shrinkflation, i.e. the size of many consumer goods have decreased. Bags of chips hold fewer chips. Paper towel rolls contain fewer sheets. Soft drinks are slightly smaller. These are techniques used by corporations to disguise increases in costs rather than increasing price due to supply chain issues caused by COVID and more recently by Putin's invasion of Ukraine and the subsequent sanctions placed on Russia, which has in turn upended the global oil market, which finally makes shipping more difficult.
I have noticed this okay, that's not fair. My wife has noticed this for quite some time, and I have been made aware of it by her. So we've actually had quite a few conversations about this, and I thought it was interesting coming into the news. And I think the headline I sent you was something like they've like proven that a pack of Doritos was like 5 Doritos less than the initial pack.
It is fewer chips on average.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think this really raises the question of what is people's problem with this? Mm-hmm. This was going to happen, and it could happen one of two ways. Well, one of three ways. It could happen by raising the price of the container that you are already used to. Or it could happen by keeping the price and making the container smaller than you were used to, or by a combination of the two. One of those three things had to happen.
Sure.
Now, if we're talking about like, hey, the money's going somewhere and blah, 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 and all that stuff, sure, that gets into the weeds. That's a whole different conversation. So I think what we're talking about here is the ethicalness.
Do you want to pay more companies, or do you want to get less?
Right. And also the ethicalness of these companies in making it clear to people. But when it's happening to companies across the board, how should they deal with this? Or how do you feel about this? Let's go from the heartfelt.
So I feel like on this and just kind of the whole inflation issue, I'm coming at it from kind of a different perspective, because here's my thinking, right? This inflation, we all know it's because of COVID, basically. It's because of supply chains. It's because 1 million people died in the US, nearly. Yes. I mean, we're nearing 1 million.
Absolutely, yes.
A lot of them were like in transportation. It's big problems, which are not like the company's fault. It's kind of,
I blame COVID so much at this point that I don't blame Biden, and I don't even really blame Trump for the situation that we're currently.
Yeah, I mean,
I blame him for Ukraine, but I don't blame him for the Doritos. So,
I think Trump mismanaged the pandemic, but what? So did a lot of other leaders.
Right, exactly.
This is a big thing. It's a worldwide thing. My issue with what the corporations are doing is that despite these are hard times, right? But corporations are still enjoying record profits because they aren't taking the hit. They're passing the hit on to us, which of course they are. I feel like that is the exact situation in which the government steps in and says, corporations, you need to have less profits. You need to tighten the belt a little and keep the number of Doritos the same. I think we're crying out for a law here that is just addressing inflation or prices or something so that it's not all on the consumer, which it is right now.
I get you. And I agree with that on a heartfelt level. I do. Sure. I do agree with that. And I'm of course, that's why we're always wowed when we hear of a company that actually did it.
Right.
When we hear of a company that actually took a hit to support their workers or their customers, we're all like, oh my gosh, this is unheard of. But it is going into the weeds a bit. The economy, our government in general, a lot of people don't seem to wrap their brains around this. They're just, it's Biden's fault. Kill Biden, impeach Biden. Now there's signs all over, impeach Biden. Well, impeach him for what? I mean, granted, he's not doing great, but I don't think he actually did something, did he? But I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't.
Well, so here's the thing about that is that there was a poll recently, I forget when, most Americans don't know that the inflation that they're experiencing, that they know is happening, because the inflation, the high gas prices, these are undeniable. They don't know that these are caused by COVID and supply chain issues. What they think is that they are caused by higher government spending. This is the prevailing narrative again among people who are basically uninformed or misinformed.
How
Well,
could
because they're
anybody
dumb,
think that
Chauncey.
the country shut down for 2 years? At this point, we're just shy of losing 1 million people. So
Right.
we shoved a bunch of money into, and I'm not talking about the ethics of any of this. I'm just talking about the logistics of it. We
Right.
shut down for 2 years. We funneled money into taking care of these things, into solving these problems. And now you think heavy spending is going on? No, heavy spending was going on when Trump was in office, but I don't blame him. Again, a lot of the advice that he was taking would have spent more.
Yeah.
We're
Well,
telling
the
him to
other
spend more, and maybe they should have. Again, I'm just talking about the logistics of it. How could somebody possibly think that Joe Biden's build back better that hasn't even happened?
because they don't follow the news. They hear he's a Democrat. They assume he's a tax and spend liberal because they've heard apocalyptic rhetoric about that. And they're like, there's inflation. Everyone knows inflation is caused by more spending. So they assume that he's spending more. Is, you're looking for logic in a thought process that takes 0.25 seconds to get through. These people aren't thinking.
That's the deal. Now, this is going to come as a shock to a lot of people, but I find all this stuff really interesting in a passing thing. I watch the news every night. I chit chat with my wife, and I chit chat with you. That's about the extent of my news knowledge.
Sure.
A lot of it is skimming headlines, just like every other American on this planet.
Yeah, we all do that.
And I'm able to decipher the headline a little bit, even, and go like, oh yeah, I'm not falling for that. It's like, come on, man. Now, my wife tells me that so we were talking about the curve earlier in life where you start out all great.
Yeah.
And I've been wallowing in this thing. My wife tells me I'm actually a lot smarter than I give myself credit for, and that the world is actually a lot more stupid. But I personally feel like what one man can do, another man can do. And if I can come to these conclusions, especially while I probably hit my vape pen too often and don't get enough sleep and I'm totally out of shape, overworked, and don't read anything about it, why can't these people? It's insane.
Well,
I don't even know who I'm talking about. I am talking about every topic ever.
Well, I think a lot of the people who are assuming that this is because government spending are, you've got two categories here. And you've got basically conservatives, right, who are probably like intelligent people who are able to parse the news when it isn't something that like really hits their bias. But, I think someone says Trump caused this inflation, suddenly they become Sherlock Holmes, right? They are investigating every little nook and cranny of the article. They're applying maximum skepticism. They're applying maximum brain power. Someone says Biden caused the inflation. I think they probably are like, yeah, that checks out, which we do on the left too. And then on the other hand, you've got people who just don't follow the news or politics at all. And I don't know, a lot of those people are real young, frankly. Like, we're talking mostly about like 19-year-olds.
But I don't follow Grey's Anatomy at all, and I can tell you I do not have deep opinions about what's going on that show because I don't care, which is why I don't follow it.
I'm talking about non-voters here, I'm talking about people who are just disengaged, which there's a lot of American adults.
I like how our show has switched from paranormal to me just being shocked by people. I feel like this is our whole new premise. Instead of paranormal, we'll just talk about how we're shocked by the normality of things.
The real Radio Wasteland was just just the suburbs.
Yeah, and because I don't think we have any, we have all weird news this week, but I don't know if we have anything too batty. But let's move on. Let's see what we got next.
Yeah, well, so we got an armed man threatened employees and guests at the Rain Rock Hotel casino, sorry, not hotel, in Wairika last week after posting a rambling conspiracy-laden manifesto about mind control, body snatching, and staged mass shootings by government sleeper agents. Officers arrested the man in question, who is now undergoing behavioral health treatment.
Okay, my favorite part about this is that this guy took a gun into a casino because he was upset about staged mass shooting.
Here's the thing about this guy. I have not met him.
Yeah.
99% chance he was having a mental health crisis and was just completely out of his coconut.
I definitely think that's the case. And frankly, I think that's the case even with a lot of people who do end up shooting things up. Yeah. You know, that if so just the other day I saw on Facebook, of course I'll leave names out of it, that one of my friend's kids was just arrested for trying to carjack people with an air pistol that looks like a real gun, and the cops ended up arresting him. And reading through the Facebook messages, there's some compassionate ones in there, but only the people who knew him. And I thought that was, my wife put it pretty well, and she's all, these are the same people that when it happens to them, they're going to wonder where all the compassion is.
Right.
But I knew about this happening in Wairika because my wife and I drove down there that day. We went to the casino. My wife we go to the casino pretty often. My wife likes to drink and gamble, frankly.
Sure. Don't we all?
I mean, that's why I keep her, But so we pull up there and we see some cop lights up ahead and a line of cars, and we end up stopping, and some big truck things driving by. It's funny because my wife's having to talk out the window, like looking up from our Kia Soul, which is already higher than most cars, but she's like talking up a whole nother car level to this big truck. She has to relay the conversation to me because I can't hear it over the fumes. But I don't mean to be making fun of this guy. It was really nice of him to share this, but I had to get it secondhand. And he basically said that it was shut down because within the last hour, this situation had gone on.
Right.
And we drive down to some bar, and we're sitting there, and somebody gives us basically the backstory of what happened. And that's what you just shared with us. But, that day, my wife said, she's just all, I'm going to look real good today. And she's all, I'm going to put on eyeliner and actually do my makeup and like shave my armpits. And I'm just all like, ooh, things are getting wild. And we get down there, and I turn to her, and I'm just all, thank God you put on your eyeliner today. Or, if you had to spend an extra hour getting ready, we would have been standing in that casino.
Right. Yeah. And no one got hurt.
Nobody got hurt. Yes.
That would have still been really terrifying.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I had a shotgun, I think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely terrifying. I don't know how many people knew what was going on in there. I just
right. I'm sure it's a big place, but
what are we doing wrong here? And I don't want to hear about guns. I understand that guns maybe are part of the problem because they're available, but guns aren't what's causing people to use the guns more often in these situations.
Yeah. Well,
you have a manifesto, Kara, that you're not telling me about?
I don't have a manifesto. I could probably. I'm doing the last minute on the manifesto.
I could whip it out in a week, so it's like
I could whip it out in an hour, Chauncey.
Yeah,
what are you talking about?
I already got it lined out, but
yeah, exactly. No, well, so mental health treatment is hard, right? And I think that is one of the reasons a lot of people want to take issues like this and be like, this is about mental health. Because ultimately, the issue with mental health is that a lot of mental illnesses are just not all that treatable. If you've got,
at this point,
right, if you've got hardcore schizophrenia, there's a good chance that'll, some combination of like drugs and therapy will basically get your brain chemistry working properly and get you participating in society. And it's way better than it was, 20, 30, 40 years ago. But there's also a reasonably good chance that like none of the drugs are really going to do it for you. And that's not just true of schizophrenia, which I think this guy probably was dealing with something like that. Like he thought people were poisoning him in restaurants. He thought people were listening to his conversation. It's classic, like paranoid stuff. But people also do stuff like this because of just extreme depression or extreme anxiety that causes their lives to fall apart. People do this stuff when they hit rock bottom, and those are super common illnesses, and also a lot of times not really that treatable. If you've got treatment resistant depression, it's kind of like, well, you're never really going to feel happy again, so like chew on that.
Right.
And you can work on it, you can make it better, but it still really, really sucks. So it is not at this juncture something we can really fix. So
now, you used a term there I haven't heard before: treatment resistant depression.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the medical term, but I think it is. I think that's a term they use basically for when.
Okay, well then let's be clear. I'm just working with the concept. We're not trying to push a term, but the concept,
right?
Is the concept possibly the problem?
Sure.
So a lot of people we live in this world that I believe should be funding a lot more mental health help. Mental health is not a family problem. It's a societal problem. If my next door neighbor is an old lady trying to raise her son who's in his 50s, who has violent schizophrenia, that is my problem too. She is not going to protect me. She's not going to protect him. There's a lot of problems there. It's a societal problem. We need to work on that one together. But, is the concept in this world that, okay, we're having economic problems, whatever the situation is, for some reason, we're having a spike in mental problems and that are leading to these shootings somehow.
I do want to point out that like most shooters are not mentally ill, actually.
What? Okay, this is the other problem that I have. I kind of feel like anybody who kills somebody is mentally ill. Anybody who murders, if you murder, now don't get me wrong, anybody, if you kill, you could kill in self-defense or kill on accident. But if you murder somebody, aren't you kind of mentally ill to begin with?
Well, not diagnostically, not clinically. Like that's you're talking about like actual symptoms, and shooters on average, they're probably more mentally ill than the average population. But like 50% of people will get diagnosed at some point in their life with some mental illness. So it's like, if 50% of the population is mentally ill, can you really say mental illness is what's causing the shootings? Like, I think, there are definitely people like this.
If you're into eugenics, you can.
Well, God, okay. And yeah, like mental illness can be caused by the environment and stuff. You can have depression that is like not really neurochemical. It's like your life sucks, so you're depressed kind of thing. And I think that's what a lot of depression is. And I think a lot of shooters might be mentally ill in that sense. But also, if you look at high profile shootings, it's okay. So we divide this up. Our statistics on mass shootings, most mass shootings that get recorded are not really what we think of when we think of mass shootings, right? So it's mostly basically stuff like, a husband shoots his wife and a police officer. That's a mass shooting, right? Or two police officers. Well, it's just the way it's counted is counterintuitive.
Sure. This number of people in this given amount of time.
Right. But when we're thinking about like the big high profile mass shootings, like your situation where someone walks into a public place and just starts shooting people for like no.
I believe they're called massive multiple online shootings or mass.
God, okay.
All right. Sorry.
So stuff like that is a minority of mass shootings, but counted in the statistics. But when you look at why people do stuff like that, it's normally, their life really sucks and they're violently depressed combined with some kind of extremist ideology.
Okay.
And that's really the ingredient that does it. It's usually.
So this kind of brings me back to what I was saying. They're lost and confused and extremized. So creating a world where we have dug so deep into people's mental illness. Everybody I meet has a mental illness. Everybody. They're just all like, oh, I got to put this chair over here. It looks better. I'm a little OCD like that. And I'm all like, no, you're not.
Right. Yeah, that's not
just
what
want the damn
OCD
chair there,
is.
and that's totally fine. But don't, it's like you are not OCD. I know people who are OCD. I live with one, and the rest of her family is that way too. And they are like literally counting the boxes of cereal and only taking the third back last one from every can as they're shopping and stuff like this. That's OCD. I've known people who had to like put on their slippers 3 times while like whistling and breathing in and out, going, it's like, that's OCD, And so in this world where we all have something and everybody's looking for something, and that's my point, when we have ideas of untreatable things, doesn't it exponentially explode the doubt that's already growing in all of these people? All of us think we have something. I'm medicated for something. In fact, I'm confident to say just about everybody I look at, whether they admit it or not, are.
Yeah.
Just about.
Okay, I get what you're saying.
Does heartburn count? Because if heartburn counts, I'm going to say everybody is medicated.
I think there are broader societal issues to talk about here than just lots of people are crazy, right? But on the other hand, some medications legitimately don't work for some people who do need medication, but that just doesn't work.
Right.
And who can say how many people that is, right?
Right.
Who can say how many people just need like a better paying job and people who love them in their life and they don't have that, I think that's probably a lot of what it is. And extremist ideologies, no matter what they are going to be attractive in a society where people don't like the status quo. So improve the status quo and the problem starts to solve itself.
Well, I guess that brings us a bit full circle, because that's kind of what I was saying earlier. Until we're in a world where people are considered equal and can be themselves and go do their stuff, a lot of these little things wouldn't be problems. Mental health wouldn't be a problem in that world. We would basically say, oh, that person needs some help. Let's help that person out. And everybody's just, oh, that's too altruistic. No, it's not. It's self-centered. It's crap. Half the people that I help out in my life is so that they will leave me alone.
Right.
And anybody who thinks that's not the case, go ask your mom or your wife. 90% of the crap that they do is so that you will shut up and go away. That's what my wife does. She basically says, oh, I already took care of the dishes. You know what that means? That means, Chauncey, go play on your computer. I'm going to watch some TV shows and I don't want to hear anybody talking.
It's nice that you two have your own. It's nice that you communicate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have a rough day and you're just, I am not down for this right now. So I'm going to get all the obstacles out of the way to make my life easier. And that's what they do. I mean, my wife does all of our laundry in the whole house. You know why? So we don't accidentally butts up her clothes like we have done many, many, many times. Now, we're not going to now, but she's so incredibly in the habit of it. I have to like get in her way and like fight her to do some laundry so that she will go do something else. But she's so stuck in the habit of clearing space for herself from a bunch of people who don't give a crap, which is her family through the years, So basically, I guess my point here is, if you can't get behind taking care of mental health because you're a caring, compassionate person, get behind it because you're a selfish piece of whatever word fits in there in your brain. You get where we're going with this. All right.
Sure.
I'm getting myself worked up, Kara. Maybe we need to switch stories.
All right. Well, what have we got last? Well, I guess you'll like this one then. A new study suggests that half of Americans alive today may have had their IQ lowered due to lead poisoning. The study basically looks at anyone born before the 1996 ban on leaded gasoline. Those born before it may have had their IQ lowered by 3 points on average and may suffer from faster aging of the brain as they get older. This is, of course, not the only pollution-related effect on IQ in the second half of the 20th century. Many scholars believe the drop in the crime rate in the late 80s may have been at least partially due to various laws reducing the lead exposure of Americans. Many people are still exposed, however, especially in poor, often historically Black communities where there's no money to improve rotting public infrastructure, for instance, in Flint, Michigan.
Okay, you should have opened with this one because this could have answered a lot of our previous questions.
Yeah, when we're talking about why is everyone so crazy, it's lead, baby.
Oh, it's the lead, and yeah,
just the lead.
The lead.
You got to get the lead out.
Okay, so here's the conspiratorial part that I find shocking. I always feel the need to address two Americas when I'm talking. I am addressing the audience in the world that cares about looking at something and trying to take it apart themselves. That's who I'm addressing. It is shocking how this is going to be taken care of. Basically, nobody's going to care, nothing's going to be done, and nobody's going to address it. We basically just, what is a normal IQ? I bet you know. I bet you have some idea of what the number is.
I mean, technically 100, but it's normalized, so it's kind of meaningless. Like it's all the norm. The number 100 is always going to be the normal IQ in any given distribution, just because that's the way the tests are set up. If the median is like 97 or something, they'll make 100 the new 97.
Oh, good. That makes life easy.
But it's 100. That's the answer.
Okay, good. So you made $100 on your paycheck, but they gave you 95. How hard is this for people to wrap their brain around? Apparently, it's really hard because we all have 5% less. But basically, you literally have 5% less brain power because of.
It's a 3-point drop on average.
Oh, okay. Well, 3 points.
So 3%. 3%. That's not so bad.
Well, they also said other factors. They were basically also saying that other things that we might have done can also cause this to us. So it basically means we could be just shaving our brains away with this. And now that's not the shocking part. The shocking part is nobody will care and nobody will do anything. It's not why lead was taken out.
Oh, yeah.
And it will not, and people might be saying, well, what do we do about it now? What we do about it now is we utilize it as an example of we just made the entire planet less intelligent because of the repercussions of something that we did.
Yeah.
I mean, that should be eye-opening to a lot of people that a basically global choice as small as that made us dumb.
Yeah. And 3 points isn't a lot, but it's like
it's going in
a
the
lot
wrong
when you're
direction.
talking about brain, right?
Yeah, it's going in the wrong direction that evolution implies that humanity is going, or that we like to think that evolution is sending us, whether it's true or not.
We would prefer not to be dumb, right?
Yes, we want to get better. It's contrary to the human experience.
No, this is interesting though, because here's the thing: people tend to think of IQ as something that is basically how your brain is wired due to your genes or whatever. Mm-hmm. And you get something like this. It's easy to understand that exposure to toxic chemicals while your brain is developing is going to mess with your connections a little bit. But also, IQ is not a measure of how good your brain is. IQ is a measure of how well you do on an IQ test.
Yeah, and it's a measure of your ability to problem solve.
Well, kind of. Here's the thing. IQ is not, people who do these tests today, who study this, who look at this, IQ is not very useful for really for assessing individual abilities, which is what people assume that IQ is for. What IQ is for, really, what it's actually useful for, is looking at 1,000 people and saying, you know, the 1,000 people over here got these scores, and the 1,000 people over here who coincidentally live next to the paint chips and radioactive waste factory got these scores. You know, what can we say about this? IQ is useful for assessing like developmentally disabled people as one diagnostic tool in a whole bunch of different other diagnostic tools. And IQ is useful for if you've got a kid who basically tests well, for saying, you know, maybe they need to be moved into like harder curriculum because this isn't challenging them.
Right.
What IQ is
problem solving and pattern recognition. That's basically what all the things are. They're mathematical problem solving situations or pattern recognition situations.
Well, see, that's what it's designed to be, but it doesn't actually do a great job at that.
Yes, I'm totally with you.
Right.
On that.
IQ
is highly biased to the
right, and it's not nearly as biased as it used to be, but still, basically, what IQ measures is how well you are at how good you are at taking tests. And if, you know, anyone who's like an adult and says, well, my IQ is 150, it's like, it's meaningless. You know, your IQ basically stops having any meaning for an individual person beyond, you know, school age. It's useful to determine like what classes people should be in. So now I'm not saying this 3-point drop isn't a big deal. I'm just saying the point I was working towards is that there are many other things that also cause a 3-point drop, you know, or more, right? If your parents don't read to you as a child, that can be just as bad as if you've got lead poisoning, basically. There are so many things that have nothing to do with the way your brain is wired that are going to lower your scores on an IQ test.
Okay, well, what I was saying is the global implications of what this means should affect us. But as far as what you're saying is, so I'm
saying we should be worried about those things too. I'm saying we should. Well,
are we also saying that it's just as likely that the IQs dropped in those areas because nobody gave a crap enough to fix their pipes, and therefore that was representative of the types of attitudes going into teaching and growing that culture?
I mean, yeah, it's possible. I think they can probably get more like if you see IQs before the 1996 ban and IQs after, and you see a big change, you can think, yeah, lead probably had something to do with it, right? But there are so many things that are going to affect how well someone does in school. There are so many different factors, and like, we should all care about lead poisoning is an easy thing to wrap your head around. But what about like, we should all care about making historically impoverished communities better places to grow up so that kids don't like have bad outcomes for reasons that are beyond their control. Like, it's not quite the same thing as being poisoned with lead, but it kind of has the same exact effect.
Right.
So maybe I'm taking this to a whole different place than you were taking it. But
well, no, I think a lot of these conversations just come back to the thing we were kind of saying about mental illness earlier on. Right. And that is that these are global problems. And I think a lot of the issues with people is whether or not you view the world. Well, let me ask you this. Who didn't give? Now, when you talk about the Ukraine, let's say, and not giving them the money months ago, years ago, maybe 2 years ago, do you think of it in terms of we or in terms of he? I'm trying to figure out a good way to explain this, that even when society makes bad mistakes, it's still a we.
I get what you're saying. You know, yeah, Margaret Thatcher. This. Here's a quote to chew on. Margaret Thatcher once said, "There's no such thing as society. There's only individuals and families."
Right.
Personally, I think that's insane. Like, That's like saying there's no such thing as the human body. There's only cells, right?
Right.
But the point she was trying to make is that basically we are not all in this together, and that, it's all just down to people making choices, and you can make the choices that you want, and you're not accountable to anyone, kind of thing. So
right, which is part of the problem, and she might be right. She might be right, which is why it's so unpalatable. But
right.
She's
dead. But
I view myself as an individual. I view myself as a member of the family, and I think a lot of people do. Practically everybody.
Yeah.
But do they all view themselves as connected to their neighbor?
I think for a lot of people, the answer is no.
That's terrible.
And
of course these problems aren't going to get fixed.
Exactly.
Waste of time.
I spend a lot of time looking at the comment sections on Fox News just to see kind of
anytime something comes up about it, I'm just all, Venus Williams is in the news. Let's see what the Fox News comments have to say about this. I take any topic that I know is going to go. It's a horrible hate porn situation. I'm sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
Exactly. Well, I was just saying that, like, anytime I see there was one article about someone who got shot by the police, and someone in the article was quoted as saying, society failed this kid. And basically every other comment going down the line, just scrolling down for thousands of comments, so many comments, basically said, I didn't fail that kid. I had nothing to do with it. Society didn't fail them. I wasn't there. I'm not responsible for this. Their parents failed them. And it's like, that is the mindset. The mindset is, I have nothing to do with people I don't know.
Right.
Basically. I think that's a bad mindset for a lot of reasons, but I think it's one that people aggressively believe in a lot of cases when you're talking about, like, far-right partisans, because they essentially are libertarians, and they see the world in those terms, and that's what that philosophy is.
Right. Which I could get behind. I could get behind this, and here's why. If they're believing in a world where our governments don't do that and society does it separately in the free market and blah, 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 so on and so forth, the thing that they spout, the thing that we all kind of spout.
Right.
Or have spouted. I'm not getting that vibe from a lot of attitudes. I'm not getting that we'll take care of these people ourselves because we love and care about them. I'm not, if they're, my advice to anybody out there who is agreeing with that, I would say include that second part, because that first part it's just not a message I'm going to get behind. You got to include but we love them and we're going to help them another way. If you don't include that part, it's a hard sell.
Yeah. I mean, I see a lot of people who basically do tack on the free market and people charitably giving will take care of all of this. And I see that sometimes. Yeah.
Right.
But I think that's a silly fantasy, how much of his income he gave to charity. 0.01%. Like far less than the average American gives. And this is true for essentially every billionaire, except for like Bill and Melinda Gates give about as much as the average American does, like in terms of a percentage of their wealth. So I think the philosophy, let the chips fall where they may, and the powerful people will take care of the poor is ultimately, it's going to be the greedy bastards who are going to be at the top no matter what. And they will never help anyone because that's not who they are.
Well, I mean, that's what we're looking at in Russia right now.
Yeah.
Basically at the collapse of the Soviet Union. That's who these oligarchs are, is they were all the top businessmen at the time who basically came in and pillaged and raped their country for, I don't know if that's a term I should have just used on the radio, but I mean, it is what happened. Viking style came in and took all their resources and
plundered. I think the word you're looking for is plundered.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Sorry.
Yeah.
Keep that out.
I don't care, but
But,
no, I see what you mean. Like, not big charitable givers, these Russian oligarchs.
Yeah, they got every opportunity to, and they wouldn't even feel it. And then you're sitting here telling me that Bill, no, who's the bald guy that looks like a thumb?
Jeff Bezos.
Jeff
also,
Bezos.
like 50% of billionaires, if we're being honest, but like they all look the same.
That like last year when I gave that $20 to a homeless guy in a parking lot and I felt so good about it, that's basically the equivalent. That's more than all he did last year.
I mean, pretty much. Yeah. In terms of charitable giving. And it was like and that's including stuff that was probably like basically tax write-offs and stuff.
Yeah. He did take Shatner to space.
It's not even altruistic. So
he did take Shatner to space.
Well, that's good.
Charity comes in a lot of ways.
It's so true, Chauncey. So true.
All right, you're listening to Radio Wasteland. Come on back. Welcome back to Radio Wasteland. Kara, you got a follow-up from a news story we talked about, or at least a follow-up to one of my many questions. Let me tell you this, that my wife gets very irritated with me because I have a lot of questions, but I don't research any of them, and she obsessively does. So the joke around the house is I'll use the term I wonder, and basically what that means is I'm adding crap to my wife's list to research later and answer the question for me.
Exactly.
So in prior episode, I wondered if there really were a lot of Nazi clubhouses going on or something to the effect of that.
Right. So we were talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene attending the white supremacist reality. And I think both of us kind of expressed shock at the idea that there are just people praising Hitler, that there are neo-Nazis, because it seems so counterintuitive. It doesn't feel like you see those people.
Right.
So I wanted to do a follow-up and just like look into it. Like, how many people are we talking about?
Well, that sounds fun. What'd you find out?
Yeah. So a high-quality poll taken after Charlottesville indicated that 8 to 9% of Americans think it is acceptable, that's the quote, to be a Nazi or white supremacist. This works out to around 22 million Americans. Now, this was one poll. Polls can be off by a few percentage points, but even if the number is only, say, 5%, that's still about 5 1/4 Nazis for every trans person in the country. Curiously, another few percent on the same survey said they weren't sure whether it was acceptable to be a neo-Nazi, which, like, I want to live in their world where they just don't know what a Nazi is.
Huh.
Seems nicer.
They weren't sure if that's funny. Okay, so there are that few trans people, huh?
Yeah, well, trans
or I
people...
guess there are that many. I'm not sure which way I need
That's
to
what you took away from it. Yeah, so trans people are sitting pretty at about 0.7%. Okay. And Nazis, apparently 8 or 9% with a margin of error of about 3.5%.
Okay, so let's just say 5% to be easy. I still say that's 5% a lot of
is
people.
Super generous, but like, yeah.
Yeah, I still say that's a lot of people. That's
so many people.
That's one in 20. That is 1 in 20.
Yeah. And if the study was perfectly accurate, it's closer. You're getting closer to like 1 in 6.
Right.
Or like if the margin of error goes the other way.
Right. Yeah.
Which it could.
Holy smokes.
Right.
What we
so
need is
I read this.
Questions. Sorry. Go ahead.
I was thinking probably like we were looking at 0.5%, which frankly I still think is way too many. That still works out to hundreds of thousands of people. That's what I was gonna guess though. But no, there's so many.
Yeah. Because if 1 in 20, so we're looking at 5 out of every 100.
Right.
Think it's okay to be a Nazi, to be a racist. Is it
Nazi specifically? Nazi or white supremacist.
Okay, white supremacist. Let's use that.
So yeah.
because one falls under the,
there might be people who are fine with one but not the other.
Right. They're like Christians and Catholics. Well, in the sense that a Catholic is a Christian, but a Christian is not a Catholic.
You could have gone with so many things. You could have gone with it's like squares and rectangles.
Yes.
You went with Christian
I'm not
and
saying
Catholic.
That Christians and Catholics are Nazis.
Because the segment couldn't get any spicier.
The structure works in the same way.
No, I get
it. So 5 out of every 100 people that you meet are white supremacists,
or think it's okay to be one. But personally, like, I don't really distinguish.
I don't see how you could think it's okay to be
exactly. So, like,
and then I gotta say, okay is subjective. Do I think it's okay to be one? Well, what does that mean? Like, do we need to arrest them? No, we don't. But do I think it's okay to be one? Like, hey, come over to my house for a barbecue? That's a hard pass,
Right. Do I think it is morally okay? Which I feel like was the sort of vibe of the question. But you're right. Some number of percentages of respondents might have taken it like to mean, should they be sent to the
gulag?
Right. Exactly. To the just trying to think of a term, but yeah. So, maybe some of them misunderstood the question. So we bump it down by a percentage point. But we're already bringing it down to 5%. That's more than the margin of error is already. So, like, it's unlikely that there are that few Nazis, frankly.
Yeah. So what percentage? So at that point, we're looking at what 5% is. So we have about 350 million, let's say 400 million people in this country, although that's way high. So 5% of 100 million is 5 million, 20 million. You said 22 million somewhere in there. So
it's 22 million if it's like 8 or 9%. So we're probably, 20. Yeah.
What percent of the white supremacists have little club meetings?
Right.
So if, let's say, only 1% of them actually have little club meetings, out of that 20 million, that means that there are 2 million members of little Nazi clubhouses in this country. That is a lot.
Yeah, that's so many. Yeah.
That, I might be wrong, but I want to say that's the population of Utah, which I don't mean to drag the Mormon. I don't think they're Nazi, but just to get the idea.
No,
it's the population
numerically
state in our country. That's a lot of people.
I'm glad I could bring you this warm and fuzzy segment. I'm never leaving the apartment again, personally.
Yeah. Well, now, especially you. You're outnumbered. They might think I'm one
exactly.
of them. Exactly. They probably look at me and see some biker dude and feel nice.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think your Clubhouse's question is really revealing, though, because, like, I think the reason we don't think there are that many Nazis is because we only encounter the Nazis who are dumb or crazy enough to, like, join a Nazi organization or get a swastika tattoo or, like, be out and proud about it.
Which is the other terrifying aspect of this. There are Nazis that aren't dumb. And a lot of them, apparently.
Yeah, the majority.
Like, I always knew that there were like some that were like leading it,
Yeah.
Last week we talked about that movie Green Room where they were all dumb, and then there was Patrick Stewart who was like leading the group, and I'm like, yeah, there's the smart Nazi, the rare mythical smart Nazi has shown up, But apparently, I don't know. I find this very disturbing.
Yeah, and I mean, I think they're dumb by dint of being Nazis, but like,
sure.
They're not dumb enough to identify themselves as such. Because I think the other 90% of America, 95%, is still pretty violently anti-Nazi, right? Like we don't love them. So,
yeah, well, I mean,
except for those like 3% who weren't sure. Who are you? I'm dying to meet a person who isn't sure whether it's okay to be a Nazi.
Yeah. Well, I mean, somebody who doesn't know the word, and then you'll explain it to them, and they'll be, oh, it's not
Oh,
cool.
that sounds bad.
Or they'll be all, oh, like Grandpa,
Oh God. That's
like Uncle Bill.
And I mean, I wonder, honestly, just even beyond these percentages, like what percentage of Americans, if there are this many Nazis, what percentage of Americans hate the Nazis because they know we fought them in World War II and they know about the Holocaust, right?
Right.
But otherwise hold all the same political positions as the Nazis did. I would bet it's a solid few percent if actual Nazism is this widespread. There's probably some people who wouldn't think of themselves that way, but like also would like to establish a white ethno state, which is literally the definition of being a Nazi.
Well, I guess to be fair, Nazi Germany was a socialized white ethnic state as opposed to a capitalist one, so they can hate it if they want to.
Kinda. It was still heavily capitalist. Like the business leaders were basically in charge of everything. It was sort of state capitalism, but there was also, and this is kind of an important facet of it, it was in a sense, a strong welfare state. And that's what sort of the S stood for, the socialism part, but also because Hitler knew that people would be more willing to vote for a socialist party at the time. But really, like the whole ideology is if you're in the in-group, the state will give you everything, right? And if you're not, then you die. And that's how they get, like, the ideology of Nazism is super crude. It's just, we're going to kill all the people we don't like and divvy up their stuff and give that to the people we do like. And to keep that going forever, because that's obviously not sustainable, we are either going to invade other places or just keep segmenting who we deem acceptable in order to, keep the loot flowing. That's kind of the idea of Nazism.
So
I mean, there are other ideas.
Kind of like Thanos, a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Thanos was just random about who he was killing, but as soon as he started picking, he'd be a Nazi, basically.
To be fair, that's actually not what separates Nazism from, because there are other ideologies that are basically that, in terms of there's an in-group that we will give everything to and an out-group who we will destroy. That's sort of fascism in general, but another component of Nazism and fascism that's just as important is also the idea that the world is divided into races and that each race is tied to a particular piece of land, and that the competition between races is inevitable, natural, and good, and will result in the extermination of inferior races. That is ultimately the ideology of Nazism, is that, and basically their team was the Aryans race, right? But they saw the world as being just a bunch of races, and the races are fighting each other. That's the idea. People don't know this. People don't know what the Nazis were actually all about.
So Hitler was basically a dungeon master.
Yeah, kind of.
Just pitting races against each other in their ancestral land and, wiping out the bad ones and the good ones are living.
I mean, it is a very...
Sounds like a D&D campaign, man.
I want to emphasize, in case this was not clear to anyone, this is a bad, horrifying ideology. And it's
I think it's clear.
It is not based in fact, and if you believe it, you're a bad person, because even if it was through some insane way based on fact, it would still be horrible.
Right. Yeah. Huh. I'm just shocked that there's all these clubhouses. Yeah. Okay. Well, this feeds into my other thing. Sorry, it took me a couple seconds to put it together, because I kind of view it mixed in with toxic masculinity, and I know that's a hot button word that's going to piss some people off, but so a lot of these Nazis are walking around thinking, I'm better,
Right.
better, but I'm also going to sneak around in the shadows, not tell anybody about my little clubhouse. What a bunch of wusses, man. Come on out here and tell us what you're up to. What a wussy move. I always kind of view that like dudes who like, sock their wife around and then in public are just all like, what? Oh, we're so great together and blah, blah, blah. What a wuss, man. You are such a wuss. And I know that's like maybe toxic masculinity in itself for my saying it, but you got to speak their language.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't have any data on this. I'm guessing the like numbers on people who are part of this 8% and people who beat their spouses, their wives, let's be honest. We're talking about men who beat women.
Yeah.
Is probably, I think that Venn diagram is a circle, I think.
I got to pull my tribe together, man. My tribe of cisgendered white men. Unfortunately, in this world where we well, we live in this world where everybody is
That's
separate.
not what I wanted you to take away from it when I told you the ideology of fascism. Pulling white men together.
Yeah. But we live in this world where like people are constantly like going like, well, the gays do this and the blacks do this and the trans people are teaming up over here to do this. And I'm constantly aware that everybody else has like a group that they're working with. And I appreciate that. I think that's the way that the world works. I gotta say, my group needs some better leadership.
Yeah.
I don't like not having a group. I want to be a part of some stuff, but every time I go out, my tribe's all, hey, we should do this. And I'm all, no, not down. That's not a good idea. But of course, I'm joking aside, but, I think there is something there where people are finding a lot of pride in these other aspects of their identities, that they're able to identify with other people and change the world and take a lot of pride in that. And they should. I've seen it a lot growing up throughout my life in the gay community, which is a community that I've grown up close to, or of course, seen it on TV throughout the 60s and everything with the Black community and stuff like that. And, I think it's great. And I think it's great for people. I think that maybe the cisgendered white males need to get a different plan with their group than this one.
Here's what I think you should do that. Here's my method for because you're right. It's nice to be able to have an aspect of your identity that you feel you share with people and just sort of.
But that's also unique, So like a gay person is just all like, oh, well, we're a small part of this world, but we team together and we're family and we work together. I mean, that's beautiful.
Right. So I've got the perfect solution. Here's what you do. You get really into astrology and you make a club for what are you, a Gemini, Capricorn, whatever,
An Aquarius.
You're an Aquarius? Okay. I don't know how it works. I don't know.
Given the way the world treats me, I thought I had a big sign above my head that I couldn't see.
So you make an Aquarius club. Problem solved.
You missed the meat of my story.
That's possible.
The meat of the story is that you're a part of a culturally relevant group that's changing the world and making differences on a cultural relevant to the way we're seeing society go.
Right.
The astrology group, for all the good they're doing, don't get me wrong,
raising the profile of discriminated against,
is not fulfilling that.
Right.
That there's something about. Oh no! I figured. Oh no!
What?
There's something about the persecution that makes it impressive.
Yeah.
That's the part. That's the part that makes it impressive.
Yeah. Well,
so here's my advice to you white guys out there looking for a new group. You don't want the persecution, so give it up.
Yeah. Join an ally advocacy group. That's I think you're actually kind of pointing to a real thing.
No, I am, and I really was just working through it working through it right then. Don't get me wrong. It's not something that keeps me up at night or something that I'm just, why can't I just belong? But it is a thought that crosses my head that I think, well, maybe people feel ostracized, not for all the reasons that other people feel, but because they're not a part of the group.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, I think like white pride or whatever is part of it. And see, I'm of two minds on it because like these people are like, we're proud to be white. And it's like, well, you shouldn't, because that's a constructed identity that really only has any kind of meaning in relationship to like the ideologies of white supremacy. But also like, you're probably the thing that you're most like, you're not German, you're not Irish, like you're probably like 1/16 all of these different things. So like what are you gonna do? Like Euromut pride?
Yeah.
I think
can get behind that. That's a good title.
Yeah, but also like ultimately the point of like pride is you have pride when you are beaten down and told that you're nothing. Right. That's when you need pride. Like
in the face of oppression.
You don't need pride if you aren't oppressed. So
that is why I don't have white pride, because I have no pride in the face of my oppressor.
Right.
And that's, and I totally get you. That is exactly what that term means. Basically you're telling me that I should be ashamed, and my response is I will not be. Yeah. And
on the other hand, neo-Nazis are using that as a recruitment tool.
Yeah, that's weird.
I don't know what to do about that. I really don't.
We'll take a break and then we'll come back. You're listening to Radio Wasteland. All right, welcome back to Radio Wasteland. Kara, you got something a little haunty to tell me about?
Yeah, so let's talk about the Zarafopol mansion in Romania. So it was built in 1850 by a local lord and later acquired by a wealthy horse seller, George Zarafopol, who lived there for many years. During the 1920s, George spent everything he had in attempts to discover crude oil on the estate after being told it was possible, that it was there by a number of unscrupulous businessmen whose identity I wasn't able to ascertain. In 1930, a ruined George financially ruined, hung himself in his bedroom and was buried in the family crypt nearby. Afterwards, the mansion has been a site of peculiar activity, indistinct voices, bizarre sounds, steps, and mysterious cold currents that appear to draft through the very walls. The locals call it the House of Evil and the House of the Devil, since during the day it is said to be charming and untroubled, but at night exudes an aura of intense menace. After the communist takeover in Romania, the mansion was confiscated by the regime, although I haven't been able to determine what, if anything, it was used for. In the early 2000s, the heirs reclaimed the estate, who donated it to the local community to be used as a school for arts and crafts. For reasons that are not clear, possibly the preponderance of ghosts, the building is not currently used as part of any teaching effort and has basically been abandoned.
It's good to see that Romania isn't all talk.
Yeah. I want there to be haunted mansions in Romania, and I'm happy that there are.
Yeah. It's like, it's got to maintain. I mean, we all know Vlad happened. That was real.
Long time ago, though.
Right. You got to...
What have you done for me lately in the ghost department?
Exactly. Nobody's... Yeah, exactly. What have you done for me lately? Eastern Europe is definitely one of those places that I've always wanted to go to, probably for the wrong reasons. Probably not for the reasons why Eastern Europeans would like us to go.
It's because you're a horror buff and you want to see the Draculas.
Yeah. But yeah, that would be a great movie of going there, show me the Draculas, some obnoxious setup.
Show me the Draculas.
Right.
Freaking B movie from the 70s.
Yeah, a bunch of goth kids, on their gap year, go to Pennsylvania.
I'll be honest, I'm the exact same. And actually, this is kind of a tangent, but I, for a really long time, used to think that the Kittrik name came from Ukraine, and I thought that I was Ukrainian because Kittrik is actually an Irish name taken from the Norse, but that wasn't our real name because the people who came over were illiterate. Their original name was probably something like Katowice. They said it at Ellis Island, and the people wrote down Kittrik because they misheard it, they misunderstood, and they couldn't spell it. So that's just kind of what happened. Another Kittrik put Kittrik on there. Anyway, I found out the other day talking to my dad. No, they weren't Ukrainian at all. They were some Germans who lived in Ukraine for like a year. It's like so disappointing because Eastern Europe, I think has a little bit more mystique than Western Europe does.
Yeah, and Germany is like the gateway to Eastern Europe, though.
It is, yeah, and Germany's cool, but everyone's German. You want to get some of that Slavic charm. You want to get some of that weird, like.
Yeah, I had my 23andMe done. As you know, I'm adopted, so my family came here 13 generations ago. I am the 13th generation of Hallworths in America. This is the family that I was adopted into. British family, very British, to the point where my dad, when he adopted me and my brother, basically specified that he wanted us to be completely white. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. My dad, he had some.
I could kind of tell the British thing from the name Chauncey Haworth.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Like, I think that's.
Yeah. My dad was a slightly racist gay man. So there was a lot of combination stuff to work out in there. But
yeah,
being adopted, I never really knew. And I was told I was half Italian and half English. And my brother was all English. This is what I was told growing up. And my mom passed on, and then years later, we're cleaning some stuff out of the attic, and I find my adoption paperwork, and my brother Soames' adoption paperwork, and it turns out I'm 100% English, and Soames is actually half Italian. So all this time, whoever told us this got our paperwork.
They got it mixed up. Yeah.
Also, it turns out that my birth parents, this is weird. Have I told you this?
I don't think so.
Okay. My birth mom was 14. My birth father was in his early 20s. And they were both water sports enthusiasts. This is all the paper said.
That honestly seemed like where someone named Chauncey Haworth, who was 100% British, would come from.
Yeah.
They're probably the freaking Yale rowing team.
Yeah. Don't look up water sports enthusiasts today. You're going to get different results. But at the time,
true,
1976, when I was born, I think it meant volleyball. So.
Oh, okay. Like water volleyball?
Yeah.
Oh. I don't know anything about like different sports, especially not sports that are played in the water. So like, I'm surprised there even is such a thing. But
right. They make you melt. I get you.
Well, I just can't cross it if it's moving at all. So.
Right. Oh, right. Yeah. So, but I did also find out that I'm 2% Northern European Jew.
Nice.
I don't know what that means, but apparently I'm that.
I don't really know what that means either, but I assume it's just Jewish people who had been living for centuries and centuries and centuries in Northern Europe.
To the point where it created a new genetic marker.
Yeah, or something like that. I don't know. Or maybe it's referring to like Northern like Israel in ancient times or something. I think that's kind of unlikely. I think it's probably the first thing, but who knows? Like all these like ways of like grouping race and stuff genetically are pretty arbitrary, you know. So it's based on sort of history and culture as much as it is genes.
Yeah, no, I know race is not a scientific term. you know,
Right.
or at least not a hard science term.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. All right. Back to the hauntings, though. I want to spend the night somewhere that has hauntings. I really do. I want to know if I feel something. I want to do what other people do. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't want to get all the little machines. I don't want to do all that. I just want to sleep there.
Yeah.
So just my CPAP mainly.
So you will have a bunch of machines.
I will have one machine, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I don't know. Have you ever spent the night in a haunted house?
No, although I feel like the house in which I grew up was maybe at least slightly haunted.
By what? Disappointment? Sadness?
Well, no, it's just because I had a lot of like waking experiences with ghosts there that I never had anywhere else. And when I say with ghosts, I mean like seeing glowing white figures. Like, so obviously there's all kinds of things about like sleep paralysis. That's obviously what it is. But also I've never experienced any of the sleep paralysis hallucinations anyplace other than that house. And also, so there was one time when I was a really little kid, and this was probably a dream or something, probably, right? But I remember waking up in the middle of the night and being unable to get back to sleep and looking over the side of my bed, and like this hand came up, and I reached out and I just sort of held the hand for a little bit, and then it sort of snaked back down. And then the next morning, I'm like, haha, Brian, real funny, to my brother, hiding under my bed, because he would sort of play pranks on me while I was sleeping. He did that like twice or something. And he's like, that I did not do that. What? And I later realized, no, that doesn't make sense because it was the middle of the night. So
have you ultimately asked him today? Have you asked him today if that was true or not?
I think I've mentioned it to him. He has not brought it up. So I think he doesn't remember this at all. So there's that. And then there's also in second grade, I remember coming out of my room to use the bathroom and turning and seeing on sort of this balcony right under the smoke alarm, this spectral sort of silhouette of a woman holding a teacup. And it was glowing white. And I was freaked out. And I just like went back into my room. And I saw the same silhouette like a ton of other times over that year, to the point that like if I got up out of bed to use the bathroom, I just like wouldn't look towards the balcony. I would really try not to because it freaked me out. And eventually I got up the courage to like go and stand right where it was and look at it. And I went up and it was just kind of the shadow from the smoke alarm. That sort of, it was just kind of the luminescence sort of looked that way from a different angle. And I accepted that. Right. But later in life, I've been like, never have I ever like seen the luminescence of a smoke alarm form like a 3D figure of a woman with a teacup. Like, how does that even happen? So there's a lot of stuff like that taken individually is not terribly compelling. And I'm only like 10% thinking that maybe it was haunted. But when you add this all together, it's a little haunted.
Huh. Did you ever look into the history of the house?
My parents built it. There was no history.
Huh.
But the place in...
Did you look into the history of teacup ladies in the area?
Well, so that was hard, but like the place upon which it was built was a mining camp. And we don't know anything about it. We only know that because the hills show clear signs of placer mining. There are foxholes. And there are like rocks that have been carved in such a way to like have posts put on them. So it was, we know it was at some point in the gold rush, a mining camp, because there's a creek down behind the house and the people panned for gold there. So that's my pet theory as to where any ghosts might, hail from in terms of the haunting is they were miners.
it does raise the question, what exactly do you spend your free time doing? Because, like, I watch a lot of TV and draw pictures, but you seem, and I'm impressed by this, you seem to have a general pretty good knowledge of just about every topic of jackassery that I can come up with. You might need to give yourself a little vacation. Take a little vacation. Sit on the couch in one of your weird robes and just marathon out some crappy TV. You know, Love Island. You need some Love Island in your life.
I have watched a lot of Vampire Diaries, actually.
Okay.
Discourse on that playing. But
yeah, that's worse for your IQ than lead. So.
Oh, I'm sure. No, I believe that it's useful to turn your brain off. But
well, I think the point of what I was saying is I always am impressed at the amount of knowledge that you're capable of retaining, even the reference to. I mean, I understand you don't have the numbers in there maybe necessarily, but you're able to reference stuff. It's like, I do not have a memory at all. You know, my wife, I think is literally a genius. And the reason why I think she's a genius is because she can solve any problem that's put in front of her. She just can't.
Well, I can't do that. I just have a good memory.
I don't mean mathematically. I mean in life. You can put any obstacle in front of Terry and she will figure out how to take care of it, and probably to her benefit. And I've realized over the years that a lot of it has to do with her just unnatural memory. Yeah. She is just able to remember factoids and stuff from all sorts of things. You ever go to a restaurant where you give your order to the person and they take the order for 6 people at your table without writing it down?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That freaks me out. Yeah, no,
she could do that. And it's insane. And she tells me that the reason why she can do it is because, for the same reason why I can, that I basically fill my brain with a bunch of useless dribble.
Well, look.
So basically, she's taking a hit for the team. She remembers all the crap so that I can dream about nothing.
I think I follow the news to a much greater extent than a lot of people. Well, not even the news, really. I think I follow politics to a much greater extent than most people do. So I've got a lot of like statistics and stuff kicking around, and I've read a lot more, I think, than most people have about just sort of arguments pro and con on issues and all that kind of thing, but like not to a useful level on any of it. I think I am firmly, I am either in the Dunning-Kruger like peak or the valley on basically everything I know. I'm not at the long plateau of experthood on really anything.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about that Dunning-Kruger. Yeah,
Dunning-Kruger.
Dunning-Kruger scale, and that it's very much like a fractal because, so here's our scoop, right? And here's everything you know and don't know about drawing with a pencil. And so I'm going to use something I do. So here's everything you know and don't know about drawing with a pencil. And then within that, here's everything that you know and don't know about drawing with a 2B pencil.
Yeah.
And then within that, 4H pencil. And then within that, using a tortillon. And then within that, different page textures. And so it's constantly zooming in and out. You're constantly in multiple stages of being an absolute idiot and genius at the same time.
It's true. I mean, writing is the same way. I think I can write decently well, but ask me to write like a Regency romance. I don't think I would be very good at that, right? There's just so many different genres in writing.
Right. Yeah. All right. Well, we're about at the end here. I do need to throw in that I've just realized that I've talked very nicely about my wife this episode, and I will throw in that the reason why is my wife and I don't spend much time apart from one another, but she's actually gone down to Reading for the weekend, and it's just me and the boys.
Oh no!
Me and the cat and the dog. And my wife.
I knew that's what you meant by the boys.
What?
I knew that was what you meant by the boys. The cat, the dog, and my daughter.
No, my
Those are the boys.
No,
oh, your daughter's also gone.
Yeah, so I miss my little family. So that must be why I'm talking so nice about it.
Nice.
All right, you're listening to Radio Wasteland. I've been Chauncey, she's been Kara, and you've been tolerable. All right, come back next week.
Welcome to the Radio Wasteland. Hello, my darling. Welcome to the Radio